Much of my identity in life now is defined by loving science, and I would call myself a scientist. I'm doing a PhD, and a lot of the opportunities that I've had in life, whether it's traveling or anything else, have been through science, and I feel like I've done quite well in it. I didn't always want to be a scientist, and I've sort of been wondering how I ended up here. I definitely, as a child, didn't have any particular desire to enter science or any other academic field. I think maybe up to the ages of like 14, 15, I had just no concept of even the idea of being a scientist. If you'd asked me back then what I would do, I probably would have just said something like be a hairdresser. Like, that's the only sort of career that I even had seen or thought of. I just, because my parents weren't scientists and I didn't really know any scientists in my real life, it was a very alien idea for me at that stage. So in wondering this and wondering how I became a scientist, I actually called my mum and I asked her why she thinks I ended up loving science so much. And the thing that she said to me on the phone was just that when I was a kid, she let me explore anything that I was interested in. So I do remember doing lots of sort of after-school activities and clubs, and none of them were science-related. They would have been art or music classes or like Girl Guides and camping and things like that. So I definitely had a life that was full of lots of different experiences, and I had this feeling that I could just, if I was interested in something, I could pursue it. And I definitely had a lot of interests. My mum never directly bought me like science books or something and gave them to me and said, read this, I want you to be a scientist. Or she never really bought me those sort of toys I see now for kids that are very science learning based. But what she did do was make me feel like, for me, anything was possible. Any career that I wanted to do, I felt like she would have been supportive of it. And that goes for my whole family as well. So I think with that mindset, when I got a little bit older and I started reading about, real issues in the world and real mysteries, and I would see documentaries and people would be talking about space and the mysteries of the universe and dark matter and all these unsolved problems that people wanted to figure out. I always had this idea that, well, why can't I be the one to try and figure them out? I really did feel like for me anything was possible. So, when I saw problems in science, it wasn't that they were classed as science. That wasn't the reason I wanted to pursue them. I just felt like my personality wanted to pursue problems that were difficult, and nothing really felt out of my reach. I have two brothers who didn't end up going into science, and they had exactly the same parenting as I did. So I don't even think you can really ever make a child into a scientist. I think, some will really like science and some will like other things. You can't really give your child any certain passion. I think that's the number one thing, is that you just have to let them be who I think they're going to be. And I think the best you can do is give them that sense that for them anything is possible and that they can pursue whatever they want and that they will have support around them doing that. I definitely had a lot of support, and I think that's all you really need to be a scientist, is that idea that you can actually tackle these big problems. Science is something that attracts people who want to work on some of the biggest issues, people that aren't content with just saying, there are all these things we don't know and I'm okay with not knowing. Scientists really want to actually find out these curious things about the world around us, and all they really need to be equipped with is that idea that we can make a change in the world and that we can figure things out. Nothing is set in stone, and each of us sort of has the ability and the creativity to make those changes. I know some people, even some friends of mine from school, who had parents who were sort of quite academic, and they actually did actively put effort into trying to make their kids pursue science or any other particular topic, whether it's medicine or law as well. And actually those people that I know didn't end up pursuing what their parents wanted them to in the end. So, I actually think the essence here is to not try too hard. if you're trying to actively force someone to have an interest in something, it would probably backfire and the opposite would be true. I even think, some of those efforts could be detrimental in terms of science, in the way, like, maybe if I had been more exposed to like little science experiments that they make for kids and I see selling in stores now, maybe I would have had a skewed idea that science is just mixing chemicals and making a volcano, like a baking soda volcano. Maybe I would have thought more that science was just that stereotypical white lab coat mixing things and seeing action happen from that, because to me, I don't really find those sort of science experiments interesting, and I never did. I never found the baking soda volcano interesting at all. The only science I ever found interesting was the very abstract ideas, the maths and the physics and cosmology and things like that. So I'm sort of glad I wasn't exposed to any particular stereotype of science that had been generically made for kids, because I was able to jump straight to some of that more advanced science and think, actually, this is really cool. I'm glad I'm just meeting it in this natural, awesome form. So those are sort of my thoughts. I hope they make sense. In essence, if you're trying to make someone be interested in science, don't try too hard. You can't mold people to be what you want them to be. And if you know someone that you want to be like more curious or something like that, just encourage them in a way that makes them feel that anything is possible, that they can explore things and that they are capable of researching ideas, because they don't need to just believe what other people tell them. They can go out and find evidence and find facts for themselves.